I don't want to go the cliche route, the nonsense of getting 1% better every day. But practice is about, repetition. Practice is about doing something correctly. Practice is like turning something you're supposed to do, whether it's technique and fundamentals, into sort of muscle memory. Practice isn't about you're never going to get beat, you're never going to make a bad play.
You got your Mac and Mac guys. You got McMullen Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365 as the countdown to kickoff of the 2022 season continues, down to just 13 days before the Eagles head to Motown to take on the Lions. All right, Johnny Mac, because you were down in Miami last week, we didn't get as much of you as we needed. And you're being more dismissive of the importance of this final preseason game because you just don't care. The Eagles had 30-some-odd guys. Their subs stink. Okay, fine. They're not going to be on the Eagles anyway. I put a little more credence on it. So we'll disagree slightly there. The all-important joint practices, which we've been told now for a year and change, are actually more important than preseason games. And the coaching staff looks to do more and learn more and take more out of joint practices. Unfortunately, one was canceled. Good to see you didn't get the stomach bug that was going around down there in Miami.
I was. Oh, by the way, I got to the airport yesterday, and I got there early because I was trying to fly standby, so that didn't work. But then, I turned to the gate. It's finally getting close. I'm heading to the gate where my flight is going to leave, and it's in this little corner of the Miami airport. It's probably the hardest gate to find, of course. And I turned the corner, and there's this poor young woman just letting it go, if you know what I mean. If what happens when you have a stomach virus, right there
really?
at the gate, and I'm like, man, what the heck is going on in Miami? So
Just
yeah.
on the floor in a trash
Now,
can?
and it looked like her parents were there, and there was she had a bag, but
Okay.
you could hear it. It was not pleasant.
Audible. Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. So
So she got it. You didn't. That's a good thing. Sorry for her. But the Eagles were shorted a joint practice, which threw their preparation off a little bit. Shame on them if that is actually the case. How'd that first joint practice go?
well, it was Jalen Hurts' best practice ever.
According to
So
Coach Nick Sirianni,
so
he did say that. Did he say that to you? Did he have a straight face on when he said it?
he did, and he did. Um, And I kind of understand it. I'll get to that in a second. But the Dolphins won the practice. They won the practice, so the Eagles are no longer undefeated in joint practices. Um, the defense had issues against Tyreek Hill, which again, there's one Tyreek Hill, so you're not going to see that every
Right, but
week.
was Tyreek Hill the only guy who caught passes, or were there
No,
other
no,
Dolphin guys who actually
but
caught passes?
I mean, part of it is the splashiness of making the big plays. And, they started to struggle. The Eagles got better. The Dolphins started to struggle as the practice went on a little bit. The Eagles got a little bit better. JG was upset how they came out, and they basically let Tyreek just run through the defense.
And that was
Um,
Darius Slay who let him run by him, right? One of the Eagle
yeah,
starters,
well, it was
one of
hot.
the only two Eagle players that are actually in the NFL's top 100 players. Tyreek Hill ran right by him too,
Yeah,
right?
that's another thing. I wouldn't get too upset about that either. I've seen players.
Man, you are so friggin' easy, McMullen.
Not, not. I've seen players fill that out. I've seen players take 60 seconds of thought to fill that thing out. Because you're not picking 100 players. They tell you, they go in the locker room, they give you a piece of paper, says top 100, and they say write down as many names as you want. And guys write down 10, 15 names, maybe if they go that far, and they give it that much thought. So I wouldn't get worked up about that either.
Okay, you were talking about the top 100. I thought you were saying, yeah, I'm not worried about Darius Slay either. So
Oh no, I'm not worried
irrelevant
about
to
that.
Tyreek Hill runs by
I'm
him.
not worried about a 4-time Pro Bowl corner. No, I'm not worried about a top 5 corner in the NFL. Is he going to get beat by Tyreek Hill on occasion? Yeah, corners get beat. There's no such thing in the modern NFL. I mean, everything's skewed towards the offense, yada, yada, yada. My point is there's one Tyreek Hill. There's exactly one. Nobody else is duplicating what Tyreek Hill brings. The Eagles tried to do it with Jalen Reagor. I can't say that with a straight face. That was their whole plan. Well, we got to stretch the field vertically and horizontally like Tyreek does. So that's laughable. My point is he ain't showing up every week. So no, I'm not really concerned about that. As far as the offense, as far as what Nick said, there was a lot of checkdowns. And from his philosophy, remember, coaches look at practice different than us, even media fans, whatever. So what he was excited about was Jalen was taking what would the Dolphins play the same stinking defense as the Eagles. So everybody excited. They're playing a lot of zone. They're trying to limit explosive plays. They're trying to make you throw the ball underneath. And he threw it underneath again and again and again. He took what was there. And so Nick was really excited about the decision-making standpoint of it. But there wasn't a lot of splash plays. And the one splash play there was, it was really DeMonte Smith coming back for an underthrown ball, draws a pass interference, caught it as well. And that was pretty much it. So to the average fan, even to the average media member, that's going to look like an emphatic Dolphins win. Nick was more happy with it than probably the fans and the media were, because Jalen Hurts was making the right decision. So take of it what you will, but he wasn't lying. He was really excited because in past he would, we try to make something out of nothing. And that's part of what they're trying to say. Hey, look, you don't have to hit a home run on every play. If it's 3rd and 7 and you get 5 yards, maybe we'll go for it on 4th and 2. That's better than trying to force the football and all that kind of stuff. So that's what he was saying about good practice. And
so
I think he was telling the truth.
Well, let me get this straight. And I can wrap my head around Sirianni's line of thinking that he just wanted Jalen to take what was there. And if that was the only thing he accomplished, that's a good thing that he accomplished. That I can get. But just overall, the Dolphins and the Jets play, the Eagles and the Dolphins play similar defense. They're both looking to limit the splash plays. Jalen Hurts was great because he didn't try and force any splash plays, but the Dolphins were making splash plays all over the field. Where was the Eagle defense that's supposedly there to limit splash plays?
Well, the defense didn't play as well, but they got better as the session wore on. They were really bad probably first half, and then they were okay, even made some plays in the second half. Yeah, I mean, they lost a joint practice. Yeah, and by the way, I predicted they would lose a joint practice because they're on the road for the second consecutive week. They're in that heat, which is, the Dolphins, who, by the way, have a beautiful, beautiful training facility. They have this giant indoor practice field, and you get there for the first day of practice, and that's another story. Maybe I'll get into that. The Uber driver took Ed Kratz with me as well. Took us to the old Dolphins training facility, and which is only about 10 miles away, but if you're 10 miles away from something in Miami traffic, and that's like a half hour. So I did get there for the start of practice, but the Dolphins, because they live in it, they're stretching and warming up in the air-conditioned indoor facility. The Eagles are out there baking for 20 minutes in 103% humidity, which isn't even a real number, but that's what my weather app told me. 103%, Jody, which doesn't exist. It's supposed to be 100. Yeah, it was just funny. The Dolphins know how to deal with it. But it again, all right, they lost. Yeah, for weeks I'm saying, who cares? They won. I make fun of it all the time. I hope people understand. I make fun of their undisputed joint practice champions. I hope they understand that sarcasm.
All right,
Same
but
thing with a loss. Who
okay, I
cares?
got you, Johnny Mac. The joint practice is the preseason. Other than what they've done 9 months prior to, and the season before that, and the season before that, how do we know what the Eagles are coming into 2022? If we don't judge the preseason games because the starters don't play and the coaches don't care, and it doesn't matter that it's 48-10, that the joint practices really aren't all that important because it's
I
103
didn't
degree
say they weren't
humidity.
important. The
And
joint practice, practice is very important, but practice is about. I don't want to go the cliche route, the nonsense of getting 1% better every day, but practice is about repetition. Practice is about doing something correctly. Practice is like turning something you're supposed to do, whether it's technique and fundamentals, into sort of muscle memory. Practice isn't about you're never going to get beat. You're never going to make a bad play. And in fact, practice is a time to think of it from a baseball mentality. A great pitcher working on the new pitch in spring training, all fans get upset. Oh, so and so gave up 4 home runs. He's trying to add a slider or a splitter. He's trying to work on some things. Practice is very important to coaches. Very, very important to coaches. But they
well,
don't
then hold on. Joint practices are important or aren't important?
are
Okay.
very
Well, you just
important.
2 minutes ago said, yeah, when I say they're important, I hope people understand I'm saying it cynically with
No,
tongue
no, no,
firmly
no, no,
planted in
no,
cheek. Which is it?
no.
Are they important or aren't they important?
They are important. This is what I said. Saying someone won a joint practice is not important. That's what I said. Those are not the same things.
Okay.
It is very important. I just said it's about technique. It's about fundamental. It's about doing what Nick Sirianni was saying about Jalen Hurts. It's about doing what you're supposed to do. You can do the right thing and have the wrong result. But if you do the right thing over and over and over and over and over again, you're going to have the right result more than the wrong result. That's what practice is about. That's what's really important to coaches. The fact that I put myself in that category as well, but we as media members make a big deal out of who wins and loses, and I don't make as nearly as big a deal as some people that shall remain unnamed. That sort of creates the narrative where the fans is like, oh, this is really important. It's not important when they win. It's not important when they lose. Did they get better in that particular practice? Nick Sirianni seems to think the quarterback did, which is really important. Now, maybe there's some hyperbole involved. I don't know. I can't get in Nick's head. But I mean, I don't. Do you think it's important to win a joint practice? I guess I'll
Well,
throw it back on you.
yeah,
I don't.
I do, and I understand the point you're trying to make of win and loss. There's no scoreboard up there,
Yeah,
so it's anyone's opinion as to who got the better of it. It can't be a perfect decision. This is good. This is bad. There's subjectivity to it. Certainly, I understand that. But I'll get back to my original question. Other than what the players had done previously in their careers in the NFL, and with rookies, they have no track record whatsoever. How is an Eagle fan to judge whether this team is better to start the season than the one that ended last year if they practice in the bottom quarter of the National Football League, time spent on the field, hours logged? Is that a fair statement compared to the other teams
yes.
in the NFL at the bottom quarter? They lost all three of their preseason games. The final score is not important, but your subs against our subs, your stars against breaking it down the way it needs to be breaking down, put it aside. The fact that they lost the first quarter against the completely understandable. Your starters against our backups, well, of course you're supposed to crush us. But then their subs against the Eagles subs, they got run off the field again. They lost all 3 games. Well, they lost 2 out of the 3 games. Joint practices, they got beat up by the Dolphins here. The Browns, they certainly won the first one. Second one, debatable as to who won. It was close, called a toss-up, whatever. All those things don't add up to, damn, the Eagles are ready for the start of the season. For me, how do you determine that?
I don't know. My thought process with the modern NFL is nobody's ready for the regular season because they don't prepare like they used to prepare. So everybody's sort of on that scale. You've heard the first 2 games are really the preseason in the modern NFL. So yeah, I mean, we're all going to show up in Detroit not knowing completely what you're going to see from this Philadelphia Eagles team. Why I have them at 11 wins is because they have a lot of good players. They have more good players than most other teams. When you talk about the guys who are supposed to perform, A.J. Brown's had a great camp. Devontae Smith was injured for a while, but nobody doubts Devontae Smith's talent. Dallas Goedert, great. Darius Slay and James Bradbury have been great until Tyreek Hill showed up, and James has been nicked up a little bit recently. But earlier in camp, before James tweaked his groin, I was debating, okay, who has been the best player this summer for the Eagles? I had Bradbury number 1, AJ number 2. And it's no coincidence, by the way, that they're working against each other a lot.
They go against each other in
Yeah.
practice.
So again, cliche, iron sharpens iron, but at times it's real. At times it's real. The Eagles' good players look like good players. So I'm not worried about 45 on the roster, because the reason why, Jody, is I know if you have to play 45 on the roster, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. Would I like to get some of those players up to speed? Would I like to get some better players? Sure.
I'll give you an example of the point I'm trying to make, John. Defensive tackle, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave. How have they performed this summer?
Well, Javon's been out for pretty much, the past two plus weeks. Fletcher's been fine. No, Fletcher's Fletcher. I mean, he's not what he once was, but he's a good player.
Judged by the, and I know we pimp some of our buddies. They're more your buddies than my buddies because they're Eagle beat guys like Jimmy Kempski charting every single punt that Aaron Sippa says, and Elliott Shore Parks being able
part
to
of the problem, to be honest.
Completion percentage of Jalen Hurts practice tosses. Have you done
absurd.
The work on Fletcher Cox on how many times he has or hasn't beaten his man or occupied the tackler in an Eagle practice? Really? I got no bloody idea how ready Fletcher Cox is for week 1. None. Zip, zero, zilch. And if I was standing next to you in practice and watched every single Eagle practice snap, I don't think I would know either. So that's my point. That we're leaning on what they had done in previous seasons, and I think you have to do that in part. But in the Eagles' case, it's more so because they just haven't done anything. They practice less. They show less in whether you want to call them joint practices or whatever, and you want to completely dismiss the preseason games. I'd like something I can sink my teeth into if I'm an Eagle fan. And I'm telling you, with this preseason, the way it was done, what they showed or didn't show, yeah, I'm less confident in the Eagles than I probably should be when I just look at their roster in a vacuum and go, here's the talent they had. Well, how is that going to apply itself once they start the 17 games? Shit, I don't know.
Well, I don't have an issue. I don't know either. But I have been watching football practices for close to 30 years, way too many of them. And I did, you bring up Fletcher. Well, against the Dolphins in the bad practice, he almost killed a guy on a tackle for loss. So, I mean, there are little individual, and I forget, I think it's Salban Ahmed, whoever the heck that is, but for the Dolphins. You still, I mean, Fletcher Cox is a good football player. And yeah, I can see that in practice. And I kind of snicker at people who go the opposite route and say, well, Fletcher's done. Fletcher's done because he's not what he once was when he was in the conversation for being the best defensive tackle in football outside of Aaron Donald. Um, he's not that, but he's still a really good player. And you
I
can
hope
see
so.
that. And
I
you can
hope
see
so.
that.
At some point, John, we realized that every player at
But
some
he was
point
but here's the
starts to
thing, Jody.
decline.
Here's the thing. I don't know your gauging point. I don't know the fans' gauging point because the majority of fans I know say Fletcher had a bad year last year. Fletcher didn't have a bad year last year by film work and by what he was asked to do. He didn't have a bad year last year. He might not be what he once was, but I think Pro Football Focus, he was better. They graded him better than Javon Hargrave. But Eagles fans think Javon Hargrave is better because Javon got the
Got a
sacks.
couple more stacks.
Yeah. So I don't know what the gauge is, but he was, I believe, the 22nd best defensive tackle in football last year, which is still pretty good. It's not number 2, but 22 when you have, you don't have 64 because a lot of teams use odd man fronts, but
Right.
at least 50, 60 starting defensive tackles when you talk about rotation. That's still pretty stinking good in a comparable fashion. And that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I don't know. People's expectations get things out of whack. But Miles Sanders is the best example. Miles is a good football player. People in Philadelphia now think he stinks. They thought he was Christian McCaffrey. Now they think he stinks. So I can't control the bipolar nature of expectations, but they have a lot of good football players. They have a lot of good football players.
And I just threw Fletcher Cox's name out there. I didn't mean to narrow focus on Fletcher because I was trying to make a point. But if you do want to narrow focus on Fletcher, to use the numbers you just quoted, 22nd best defensive tackle.
And I have to look it up somewhere.
At one point, I'll take your word for it. I'm sure you're in the neighborhood because your memory's that good. At one point, right, he was top 2, 3, 4. So he's trending in the wrong direction, as should be expected because he's now a 10-year veteran. Very few guys hold that level of talent for a decade in the National Football League. Doesn't happen. But I guarantee he was down from the year prior to that. And now he's a year older. So do we expect him to trend back up to number 12? Or is it more likely if he was 22 this year and he's moving 10 slots, those 10 slots are going to be in the other direction. He's going to be number 32. I'd like to have a better reason to project which way the arrow's going. And my point is the Eagles have given me no insight to that before the season starts. They've done next to nothing. They practice limitedly. They don't care about the preseason games as much as they might have enjoyed last year's 4-0 record and I know it's not a perfect ranking, John. But everyone said, you and all your beat buddies, that they won all 4 of those practices this year.
Yeah, but I was joking about that too.
1-1-1. But they went from 4-0 to 1-1-1. That tells me this has not been a great summer. We're 13 days away from the start of the season, and I don't know what the Eagles achieved during this summer.
Well, first of all, they were practicing against the Jets last year and the Patriots, who were in the transition. Versus this year, they practice against 2 really talented rosters. And actually, Cleveland.
Did either the Browns or the Dolphins make the playoffs last year?
But we know why, though. Okay. I mean, if you look at the talent, and there's context there, they're 2 more talented teams. And actually, Cleveland, a bunch of guys did.
Patriots made the playoffs. Neither the Browns or the Dolphins did.
Cleveland has more talent than the Patriots, and I think if you look at their 53 versus 53, they might not have better coaching, but they got more talent. Now, a bunch of guys didn't even practice. So
Belichick didn't coach that practice last year against the Eagles.
No, but that's you're being argumentative. I was a lawyer, Jody, because if you were being honest with yourself and looked at the Patriots roster and the Browns roster, I bet you say the Browns roster is more talented. And you feel free to do it in the break and take a look at the
No,
players.
I'll buy what you're selling, but it's not roster against roster. It's team against team.
Well,
And
practice is
Belichick is
kind
the
of
coach of the Patriots, and Stefanski is the coach of the Browns.
and practice is kind of, again, practice. You're not trying to win a game. You're not trying a game. You're trying to win a game, a regular season game. You're trying to win a regular season game. You're trying to win on the scoreboard, right? And practice, you're not trying to win on the scoreboard. What are you trying to do? You're trying to get better. That's all you're trying to do. And by the way, you can get better by getting beat. You can get better. When you see Tyreek Hill, and you say, "Oh wow," and you get beat by Tyreek Hill, and you learn something from that, and maybe you take it in against a less talented receiver, and you learn from, then it's a success. That's what practice is about, not about winning. And that's why I said I was just as sarcastic, and I'm not saying everybody was, but I'm talking about me personally. When I said the Eagles are, I've written it so many times. If people don't know, I wasn't being sarcastic. The undisputed, defending, reigning champion, joint practice champion. If you don't get that sarcasm, I can't help you. I was sarcastic when they won, and I am sarcastic when they lose practice, because that's not what it's about. I mean, if other people want to get upset about it, I can't get upset about it. I can't stop people from that. But if you get better from practicing against Tyreek Hill, it was a success.
All right, I understand, and it's well documented, John. I picked up on your sarcasm. In case you wondered, some did. Well, I got it. Others got it. I'm sure. Maybe some of them went over their heads, but most of them did. I'm trying to get to a point here. Maybe I'm doing a bad job of laying it out. How do we know? If you're an Eagles fan, you're John Q. Eagle fan, you're a Jeremiah Butler, you're Dank Burrito, you're the Slasher, one of the guys who are good enough to jump on board with us here on Birds 365. If you're watching us, you're on our stream, we know how big an Eagle fan you are. How do any one of these guys know that the Philadelphia Eagles, who last year went 9-8, but I say 9-7 because that last game against Dallas doesn't really count. When you put your JV out there, it's like a preseason game. The outcome really doesn't matter. But they made the playoffs in Nick Sirianni's first year. They went down to Tampa. Talk about people not getting it, Eagles fans. Those who tried to tell me on my WIP show, bring on Tampa. We want the Bucks. Oh, that Brady guy, we can get the better of him. That was just ludicrous and ridiculous. People got caught up in the fact that the Eagles made the playoffs. That was the worst thing that could possibly happen. And then they played the game, and I was 100% right. The Bucks ran them off the field. But that's the team that ended the season last year. Howie Roseman et al. Have made moves to change the roster, to upgrade the roster. We're 13 days away from the 2022 season started. After 2021, are the Eagles better? If so, where? If so, how? Are the Eagles worse? If so, where? If so, how? How can we judge as Eagle fans that is or isn't the case if the practices are the practices and they go shorter than most other people and give guys who are starters days off and senior days and rest days and the like, that the practice games are overstated, the joint practice, the undefeated, the John McMullen trying to make us laugh with the cynical, undisputed, all-time 4-0, that the preseason games are completely a joke. Vanilla on top of vanilla, vanilla light, not even vanilla ice, vanilla light. And it doesn't matter what the final score is. What do we use to judge that the Philadelphia Eagles are compared to last year's team that walked off the field in defeat, borderline in disgrace against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that this team is better? How do we judge that?
You can't judge it. You can't judge it until the regular season gets here. And even then, you're going to obviously need some time to figure out what the Eagles were, what the Eagles are going to be. I think they're going to be better. I can just tell you what I think. I think they're going to be better mainly because of two players, one on the offensive side of the football, one on the defensive side. And I've talked about the pieces all fitting together. That's what A.J. Brown does for the offense. That's what Jordan Davis does for the defense. All of a sudden, the dominoes fall into place. So you have players playing out of position, trying to do things they're probably not ready for. And by adding those two players, you put people back in positions they're at least comfortable with, and in theory, they should be better at what they do. So that's why I think the Eagles are going to be better. And AJ Brown has completely lived up to the hype. I think, if anything, he's been better than expected. Now, Jordan Davis is a rookie, so there is some trepidation there because you never know how long it's going to take a rookie to catch on, because there are going to be hiccups. It's not going to be all perfect. Occasionally you get the Micah Parsons of the world, but that's very rare.
Few and far between.
Yeah. And even so, I would bet the mortgage on Micah Parsons having not quite as good a year. Still going to be really good because he's so talented, but people are going to adjust and they're going to do a better job to try to deal with him. It's part of sort of the startup costs that I always talk about with Jim Schwartz, which I love that phrase he coined. That's why I think they're going to be better. So I think they're going, and then the coaching staff, second year instead of first year, a little bit more comfortable. I think that helps. But I mean, if you go back to the Super Bowl season, none of us knew they were going to win the Super Bowl. None of us thought they were a significant Super Bowl contender when the season started, certainly in training camp. I can tell you, every reporter there will admit we had no stinking idea we were watching a Super Bowl team in training camp. Everything evolves, and they could underachieve, they could overachieve. But if you look at the talent that Howie Roseman has assembled, that's where my optimism grows from. Chris Sims, who Eagles fans hated because he didn't put Jalen Hurts on his top quarterback list last year, whatever it was, top 40, whatever it was. Well, he just came out with his most talented rosters. He's got the Eagles at 3. So now they probably love Chris Sims. I think that's a little bit high. I don't know if it's 3, but it's certainly top 10, and it might be top 5, just for good players, And again, when you're talking about rosters, nobody's talking about 52 and 53. They're talking about impactful players, and the Eagles have a ton of them. They really do. They have a ton of impactful players, and that's where my optimism stems from.
And we will get back around to the quarterback, because as impactful as all those other 21 starters may be, the quarterback still moves the needle more than any other team. And I understand what Sirianni said after the practice he had, the best practice he had. Mentally, that he made quicker
decisions. And that's a good way. That's a good word. That is a good word, mentally.
It may have been his best mental practice. Mental is good. Mental is necessary. Mental is not all of it. You've got to be able to physically be able to do it as well. And Jalen Hurts is still a TBD guy. And I'm not saying it's TBD bad. It could be TBD ascending and getting better and being a top 10, 12 quarterback. Or he could actually digress from the 19, 20, 21 ranking into the lower 20. We don't know yet. That is the biggest wait and see thing that we've got to do with the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. Coming back, we'll get John's. We still haven't gotten to the 53 yet. We got to get him on the record here because he's got to get on the record. When does your contest go down tonight?
We had to have it in 9 a.m. Sunday morning.
Oh, you already did it?
Yeah. So, you never know when teams are going to start this process. So you got to do it as early as possible.
Well, that's true, because some teams jump
some
ahead
teams
of
time start. And sometimes we get information a little bit early. So you got to do it right, essentially the morning after the final preseason game. So it's
Okay,
locked
you know who
in.
your 53 are. Then we're going to get it when we come back.
Yeah.
John
And
McMullen's
we also
gonna
have Bob
share.
Groats coming up at 9:20. Groats comes through.
Okay,
Groats.
cool. So Groats at 9:20. We'll come back. Johnny Max, 53-man roster next year on Birds 365.